Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, adopted by General Assembly Resolution 61-106 of December 13, 2006. Article 30. Participation in cultural life, leisure and recreation, and sports. 1. States parties recognize the right of persons with disabilities to participate on an equal basis with others in cultural life and shall take all appropriate measures to ensure that persons with disabilities a. have access to cultural works in accessible formats, b. had access to television programs, films, theater and other cultural events in accessible formats. C. Have access to places of cultural events or services such as theaters, museums, cinemas, libraries and tourist services, and have, to the greatest extent possible, access to monuments and sites of national cultural significance. 2. States parties shall take appropriate measures to enable persons with disabilities to develop and use their creative, artistic and intellectual potential, not only for their own benefit, but also for the enrichment of the whole society. 3. States parties shall take all appropriate steps in accordance with international law to ensure that laws on the protection of intellectual property rights do not become an unjustified or discriminatory barrier to the access of persons with disabilities to cultural works. 4. Persons with disabilities have the right, on an equal basis with others, to recognition and support of their special cultural and linguistic identity, including sign languages and the culture of the deaf. 5. In order to enable persons with disabilities to participate on an equal basis with others in leisure and recreation and in sports activities, states parties shall take appropriate measures. A. To encourage and promote the fullest possible participation of persons with disabilities in general sports events at all levels. B. To ensure that persons with disabilities have the opportunity to organize, develop and participate in sports and leisure activities specifically for persons with disabilities, and to facilitate, in this regard, that they are provided with adequate education, training and resources on an equal basis with others. C. To ensure that persons with disabilities have access to sports, recreational and tourist facilities. D. To ensure that children with disabilities have equal access with other children to participate in games, leisure and recreation and sports activities, including activities within the school system. E. To ensure that persons with disabilities have access to the services of those involved in the organization of leisure, tourism, recreation and sports activities. Article 31. Statistics and data collection. 1. States parties undertake to collect appropriate information, including statistical and research data, to enable them to develop and implement strategies for the implementation of this convention. In the process of collecting and storing this information, it is necessary to a. comply with legally established guarantees, including data protection legislation, in order to ensure the confidentiality and privacy of persons with disabilities. B. Comply with internationally recognized norms concerning the protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms, as well as ethical principles in the collection and use of statistical data. 2. The information collected in accordance with this article shall be disaggregated accordingly and used to facilitate the assessment of how states parties are fulfilling their obligations under this convention, as well as to identify and eliminate barriers that persons with disabilities face in the exercise of their rights. 3. The participating states assume responsibility for the dissemination of these statistics and ensure their accessibility to persons with disabilities and others. Article 32. International cooperation. 1. States parties recognize the importance of international cooperation and its promotion in support of national efforts to achieve the goals and objectives of this convention and shall take appropriate and effective measures in this regard, interstate and, where appropriate, in partnership with relevant international and regional organizations and civil society, in particular organizations of persons with disabilities. Such measures could, in particular, include a. Ensuring that international cooperation, including international development programs, includes and is accessible to persons with disabilities. B. Facilitating and supporting the strengthening of existing capacities, including through the mutual exchange of information, experiences, programs and best practices. C. Promoting research cooperation and access to scientific and technical knowledge. D. Provision of technical and economic assistance, where appropriate, including by facilitating access to and mutual exchange of accessible and assistive technologies, as well as through technology transfer. 2. The provisions of this article shall not affect the obligations of each state party to fulfill its obligations under this convention. Article 33. National implementation and monitoring. 1. States parties, in accordance with their organizational structure, shall designate one or more authorities in the government in charge of issues related to the implementation of this convention and shall give due consideration to the possibility of establishing or appointing a coordinating mechanism in the government to facilitate relevant work in various sectors and at various levels. 2. States parties, in accordance with their legal and administrative arrangements, shall maintain, strengthen, designate or establish a structure, including, where appropriate, one or more independent mechanisms, for the promotion, protection and monitoring of the implementation of this convention. In designating or establishing such a mechanism, states parties shall take into account the principles relating to the status and functioning of national institutions for the protection and promotion of human rights. 3. Civil society, in particular persons with disabilities and organizations representing them, are fully involved in the monitoring process and participate in it.